in his search for meaning, significance, and purpose. And of course, his appreciation for the true, the good, and the beautiful. And again, you must understand these problems require bangs. I mean, sudden binary pops into existence, since there's no evidence for any gradual development in any of these. So I, like you, have a choice.
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Tonight, we are going to be taking a look at a guy on PragerU that was on there about 7 years ago, but still, he was trying to prove that God definitely exists. He's got 4 reasons as to why he thinks God definitely does exist. So, what we have tonight is a guest speaker on the PragerU channel. He is going to be attempting to prove that God definitely does exist. He was at one time, apparently, an atheist, just like all of them. And because he's a Christian, or at least a theist now, he's obviously had to write a book. So he's got that, and now he's going to tell us what convinced him that God definitely does exist. He doesn't argue for a specific God, he just keeps it to pretty much a deistic type of God, just a general idea of what a God is, just the general idea that a God does exist, at least the monotheistic God. So he is getting a little specific there. Let's head on into this shit, shall we?
You know, for 27 years, I was an atheist. I thought anyone who believed in a God or gods was, well, stupid, or uneducated, naive, gullible, or just into the gig for money, sex, and power. I mean,
hold on. So, I mean, I can understand why some newer atheists might consider theists to be like the dumb, ignorant, maybe ignorant, but the dumb, uneducated type of people. But, you know, once you get out of your angry atheist kind of mindset, generally you move into more of an acceptance of, oh, I was gullible and I was, you know, tricked by all of these so-called facts at one time. And so, I mean, I wasn't dumb, or maybe you did consider yourself dumb. Hell, I don't know. I just know from my own experience, I know that I wasn't dumb growing up. I just had never considered the proposition. So I guess I would fall in the ignorant camp. But that's no reason to come at it with such animosity. Just because somebody's ignorant of something doesn't mean that you have to treat them like shit, you know? Initially, when I became an atheist, I was a pretty angry atheist. You grow out of that shit. At least I hope people do. The money and the sex? I'm sorry. I don't understand. Like, for the most part, when somebody becomes a Christian, technically, you're supposed to donate your money to the church. And I don't understand why you think that becoming a Christian would get you more money if you have to tithe 10% a year. If you work the math on that with an abacus or any other kind of calculator you want to, that results in less money for you. Now, of course, if you want to go this guy's route and write a book about it and actually, you know, turn it into a career, yeah, sure, you're looking at some money. But that's not the general Christian experience. The general Christian experience isn't believe in Jesus and get money, you know, kind of thing. And then there's the sex. Does anybody join Christianity to get laid? I don't know anybody that has been like, you know what, I bet you if I started sucking Jesus' dick, I'd get laid once in a while. I've never considered the whole idea of becoming a Christian so that you could get laid. Like, that just doesn't track. And then power, again, general Christian out there doesn't become a Christian for power. That might be something that happens in the future if they are power hungry, but I would say that anybody that becomes a Christian so that they can gain power over other people is not really a Christian at that point. Like, they didn't actually join Christianity. They don't actually think that, you know, Christ is their savior. They play it up. And I mean, maybe that's just a no true Scotsman that this guy is playing at, that like these people that get into these big power positions as Christians are not really Christians or something. So I don't know. This kind of throws me off.
After all, everyone knows that religion is just a psychological crutch for intellectual weaklings, right?
No, I mean, I don't think that. I mean, I think that some people use religion as a crutch. I think some people use God as a crutch, but I don't think that means that religion inherently is a crutch. I think that it can be a crutch for some people. I kind of feel like if this guy ever was actually an atheist, he was one of those asshole atheists that I generally don't want to actually like associate with. Like, I feel like this guy would have been the asshole that everybody else just doesn't want them to say that they're an atheist because they're embarrassing. This guy was basically David Silverman.
So, what changed my mind? Well, look, I tell the whole story in my book, Shattered, but for our purposes here on Prager University, I was simply challenged by my Christian teammates on the Cincinnati Reds to read some religious books, critique them, and then share with the guys where the authors were wrong and why atheism is the only real and true outlook for anyone not deceived by fantasy, fiction, or mythology. I mean, for someone who wants to base their beliefs and values upon evidence and argument, not emotion and tradition. Now look, simply put, I set out to disprove theism, which I didn't think would take very long. But I ran into some difficulties along the way. Difficulties like Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas.
Okay, I don't understand why those things are difficult. I certainly don't understand why he had to set out and disprove theism. Exactly. That's why I titled this as a theist arguing for God. Because I don't know if he's Christian or not. I would assume that he's Christian, considering he's speaking English, the United States dialect of English. He's a white middle-aged guy, or maybe not so, maybe the later stage of middle-aged in America. I would assume that he became a Christian, but regardless, he's just talking about a general God, the general idea of theism, just a God that exists. I don't know why you have to frame it as I sought to disprove theism. Now, I don't think that even I can disprove theism. I think that I prove why you shouldn't necessarily believe that a God exists based on the evidence that we have, but that's far from disproving theism. I would say that I could definitely disprove that the Christian God exists, or I can disprove that Christ or Jesus was the Son of God and was the Christ. I could definitely disprove those ideas based on the evidence that we have. But as far as theism goes, I really don't think that anybody should hang whether or not they are a theist on whether or not you can prove that theism is true. I think that you should look at the hypothesis of a God existing, what are the arguments for it, and whether or not you should necessarily believe in that, considering the evidence that we have. But like I said, that's far from proving that it's false.
I mean, in simple terms, I was confronted with the awareness that there are really 4 big bangs that have to be accounted for, not just one. I'd never really even considered that before.
4 big bangs? The fuck is he talking about 4 big bangs?
I mean, we're all familiar with the first big bang, right? It's usually the answer given to the question, why is there something rather than nothing? It's the idea that there was nothing, it popped, and boom, there's something. I mean, that time, matter, and space all came into existence in some great cosmological flash about 16 billion years ago.
I believe the current number is 13.7 billion years ago. So you're a few billion years off, but I mean, that's a little pedantic. I get it. I mean, he's just throwing out a number. Either he misread it or he misunderstood it, or maybe he just was like a big number, 16 billion. Regardless, that's a little pedantic, but basically this is what the guy is actually, doing.
Smoke weed every day.
That's not exactly, I mean, I feel like that's what he's getting. He didn't exactly say that, but anyways, we're going to let him continue. So the whole idea that the hypothesis says that the universe came out of nothing. When apologists talk about nothing, they mean something entirely different from the scientific nothing that actually exists. The nothing that they're talking about is absolutely nothing, like devoid of all energy and everything like that. The scientific nothing that actually exists still has an electrical charge in it. So the idea that a universe could inflate from what seems to be nothing is very plausible and probable. Just understand, whenever you hear an apologist say that the Big Bang theory is that the universe popped into existence out of nothing, you have to be very specific about what that nothing is, because that nothing is totally different to an apologist. Also, I would correct them and say that it was an inflation, not necessarily a bang. That's just how it was initially characterized. But it was really an inflation, a near instantaneous inflation.
There was no gradual development, no transitional forms, just a binary flip. A metaphysical, now you don't see it, and now you do.
All right, see, now this is fundamentally flawed because he kind of makes it out to be like it's a very creationist kind of inflation of the universe. He doesn't really go into the specifics about the inflation of the universe. What he thinks happened is that the universe inflated, right? Completely put together as we know it to exist now. And it just inflated from that point. This concept right here is a very creationist view because the difference between what actually happened, like as far as the universe just inflating and stopping right there, just the universe inflating, and then God popping things into existence through an incantation, is that one has a magical wizard doing it while the other one just has nature doing it. And I would hope that people would come to the conclusion that nature is most likely the culprit, not some pre-existent magical wizard that spoke an incantation in order to pop everything into existence. What he's not telling you here about the universe inflating near instantaneously is that it didn't all come together at once. He thinks they did because of his creationist point of view. But what he's not considering here is that when the universe inflated and filled with inflaton particles, and then the inflaton particles transformed into what would eventually become the matter that we have today, you have to understand that once that happened, the universe was too hot and too dense for even atoms to form. It wasn't until much, much later, like hundreds of thousands of years later, as we would experience them at least, would atoms start forming and light would start traversing through the universe. It took a long, long time in order to get to where we're at today. 13.7 billion years to be exact. What he's not considering here is that it was a long development process. There was a long time where just nothing was happening. No Earth existed. No life existed. For the majority of the time the universe has been around, life has not been in the universe as far as we know. Maybe there's some alien life out there that, had a jump on things and started off like when the first planets were forming or some shit like that. Maybe. I don't know. As far as we know, no other life existed in the universe for most of the 13.7 billion years that it's been around. I don't know what he means by it just immediately happened like a light switch.
Fine. I want to follow the evidence wherever it leads. However, astrophysicists tell us that this first Big Bang yielded only a handful of fundamental elements, and that it would take billions and billions of years for the nuclear furnaces of trillions of stars to yield the 118 elements in the periodic table.
This is the one thing that KC and I were somewhat discussing in the car as we were listening to this bullshit. Because, honey, he did just say that all 118 elements are produced in stars, including the two rows that are man-made elements. And it's a bit pedantic to point out that he's wrong about that because the bottom two rows are man-made elements. Not all of them, but we understand what he means. I also don't understand, though, why he thinks this is ridiculous. Let me just tell y'all what science says real quick. It took a long time for all of the stars to produce the heavier elements. Can you believe that shit? And he's not explaining like how that happens. He's doesn't understand how in stars nuclear fusion is happening and that, hydrogen and helium atoms are being compressed together. Helium and helium atoms are being compressed together and then they give off light, like they give off photons once they fuse and that's what creates light in the universe. And then they start making the heavier and heavier elements. I mean, this is just science. He's obviously ignorant of basic science, which I don't know what in the fuck he researched in order to come to his conclusion that God definitely exists, but it definitely wasn't picking up a fucking science textbook because you can find all of this shit in just a basic high school science textbook, okay? So, I mean, this guy just simply doesn't know his science, like, at all. I would hope that you would, if you were investigating whether or not a God exists, and you were looking into the Big Bang Theory, you would actually know the scientific explanations for like heavier elements and how stars create the heavier elements, why it takes so much time. All of this falls right in line with the Big Bang Theory and how much time it gives us. So I don't understand the point in bringing this up.
But the first theoretical cosmological Big Bang, well, it only yields matter and energy. It doesn't even begin to address the origin of life. So how do you get life from non-life?
No, not this. Please no. What's not on the periodic table? The Q element? That's right, there's no Q element. You know what's also not on there? Dumbasses, like this guy.
How did abiogenesis occur? I mean, the notion that something can come from nothing. Where's the evidence?
I'm having to stop every few seconds here, and I'm so sorry about that, everyone. So, no, abiogenesis is not life from nothing, all right? If you want life from nothing, like, not even creationists believe in life from nothing, because even then, God had to spit on some dirt in order to form Adam, and he made Eve out of Adam's rib after he slipped him a roofie, and then extracted his rib. I mean, I guess so. I mean, he made the entire universe out of nothing, I guess. But still, abiogenesis is the hypothesis that life originated from pre-existing non-organic chemicals. Without looking up the technical definition, that's the best way I can describe abiogenesis. So it's not life from nothing, it's from pre-existing chemicals. The Urey-Miller experiment showed us that amino acids can be produced naturally without any kind of intervention, that they just naturally form when given the correct parameters. We have other experiments that show how these amino acids can self-organize, how molecules themselves can self-organize, and all this other stuff. So it's not life from nothing, it's life from pre-existing non-organic materials. It's organic from non-organic is what it is, not from nothing.
Well, you're going to need another something from nothing leap of faith, some kind of biological second Big Bang. For all the mind-blowing advancements we've made in physics, biology, and chemistry in just the past 100 years, we're still no closer to making it happen. We don't have a clue. The closer we look, the wider the chasm.
No. Actually, the closer we look, the more like steps that we have in between the left side and the right side in this little picture here. Because what we definitely have stepping stones that would allow us to cross that gap. In fact, God lives in the smallest portions of those stepping stones. So you're just not correct about this. You've obviously haven't read up on the most recent research. Even 7 years ago, this video doesn't represent the most recent research.
I mean, sure, we've learned a lot about how to manipulate life forms, how to add and subtract DNA material, even map the human genome, but we have no idea how to literally create life from dead stuff.
Wait, hold on. You're going back and forth here because at first you said life from nothing and now you're saying life from dead stuff. You're totally equivocating things here. It's either life from dead things or non-living things, or it's life from nothing. You gotta make up your mind there, man. Also, it's not dead things. It's not like you can cobble together a Frankenstein creature and bring them back to life or something like that. At least I hope not yet. That's the setup for a zombie movie. Life from non-life is definitely possible and probable. I feel like he's just exposing how ignorant he is on it. Or what I think is going to be the most likely situation is that he's being purposefully dishonest or disingenuous. Because anybody that has researched any of these ideas would definitely know that it's not either life from nothing or life from dead things.
Now look, at this point, we still only have physics, chemistry, and some basic biology, or matter, energy, and simple life, if you will. But we still don't have a way to account for the great diversity of life forms.
Cal, he's sitting here complaining about the diversity of life. He's using Noah and the flood, one of the most unscientific things that you can think of. Also, can anybody tell me what's wrong with this picture? I doubt that you'd be able to tell. He's got 2 male lions boarding the fucking ark. How fucking dumb do you have to be over there at PragerU to do this shit? No, they're definitely going to be fucking each other in the ass, but they're not going to be producing any baby lions. Those are 2 male lions there. I didn't even notice this the first time I watched it. I like how he says that there's no explanation for the diversity of life when we have evolution. By the way, evolution is a fact, and you can't get these t-shirts by going to btwevolutionisAfact.com. Just got to get that little bit of a thing in there.
I mean, the huge differences between bacteria, plants, and animals. Nor do we have a way to account for the differences between man and animal. We still don't have an anthropology at this point.
We definitely can differentiate between men and other animals, which, oh, I feel like I know what he's talking about here. So he's like, we can't differentiate man, one animal, from the other animals. They're all animals. We accept that we're all animals? Is that what he's talking about here? You don't think that's what he's saying, honey? Maybe I'm being too charitable. You know, you told me that I need to be a bit more charitable in these things. You don't think that's what he's saying? Yeah, we will have to listen to more, but I feel like he's saying that, well, science says we're an animal and they're animals, and we can't discern between two of the same thing. But in action, I mean, we are just animals.
So we're going to need a kind of anthropological third Big Bang to account for all this, which of course is what Darwin was after in his Descent of Man thesis.
The Descent of Man was not about anthropology. The Descent of Man was about evolution. Darwin's hypothesis about evolution was about scientifically explaining the diversity of life. It wasn't about the anthropological history of human beings.
Now look, Darwin answered a lot of questions, but he could never answer the core question. How did evolution begin?
He doesn't have to answer how evolution began, you fucking twat. Well, it just pisses me off. He couldn't answer how it began. Evolution's a process. It doesn't matter at what point in time it began. It only matters that it's definitely happening. Darwin did not attempt to try to discern when it started, which technically would have been when life first appeared. As soon as life appeared, that's when evolution happened. But also, if you consider the other forms of evolution has always happened because evolution's a fucking process of nature. This guy I'm so glad I don't have like a fucking blood pressure monitor, because I'm sure I'm off the fucking charts. I mean, I'm not the smartest motherfucker when it comes to evolution, but at least I know my ass from a hole in the ground, which is obviously not what this guy knows.
But hey, we're still not done describing the world that is all around us. A final Big Bang is going to be required to explain how a mechanistic animal brain can become a self-reflective human mind.
Well, let me blow your mind there. I forget what your name is. We're still animals. We're part of the animal kingdom. We are animals. So you're asking us to discern one animal brain from another animal brain. We can definitely tell you the differences in biology. We can tell you how they operate differently. We can tell you how our instincts are different. And evolution definitely explains how ours developed, how theirs developed, how all of this shit developed, like all this shit being life, how all of it diversified and developed in things. All right? That's already explained. You're either being purposefully dishonest or disingenuous, or you're just so woefully ignorant of the topic that it seems like you didn't even investigate. Like, you were like, oh, does God exist? And then boom, you got hit in the fucking face with goddamn Thomas Aquinas, and you're like, well, shit, I can't think of good responses to these. I guess God exists. Woo-saw, motherfucker.
Even the lowest life forms have brains and central nervous systems.
That's a false analogy there. I mean, to call the nucleus of like a single-celled organism the brain, I feel that's not a great analogy there. A brain is a collection of cells that interact with each other in order to produce complex functions, whereas the chemistry of a single cell is much different than a brain. Characterizing it this way, I feel like is really giving off the wrong impression. I don't know, maybe some of the more microbiology-centered people in the chat can correct me, but I feel like this is just a poor analogy. I feel like this is an analogy you would use to fifth graders when you're trying to teach them like what the nucleus is and shit.
I mean, how does something like that become the mind of a Michelangelo, a Shakespeare, a Beethoven?
Let's see. How do we go from single-celled organisms to humans? Probably evolution, motherfucker. Because evolution is a fact.
Come on, animals don't do art and they don't appreciate beauty.
Okay, I got to be honest with y'all. I'm going to go back a little bit here. Hold on. I so thought this was a squirrel smoking a cigarette. I mean, that's what it looked. I feel like it's like a squirrel that's just needed a break, and it's just like, motherfucker's got me in this video, and I feel like I'm about to slap a motherfucker. How do you know what in the fuck a cow is thinking? I mean, a cow could think something's beautiful. A monkey can definitely think that. A bear could think something's beautiful. You don't fucking know their lives. Yeah, so, and also animals can definitely do art. I'm fairly certain that I've seen like other apes do art, as well as what did you say the other day, hun? It was like elephants. Yeah, painting elephants. Like, he obviously just does not know a fucking thing about the shit that he's talking about. See, this is why both KC and I came to the conclusion that this guy is just disingenuous. He's just totally dishonest in everything that he says. And PragerU still has this video up on their channel 7 years later.
But the problem is even more basic than that. How do you account for free will and introspection, let alone man's pressing existential drive to ask why?
Okay, if I had to, shoot in the dark to explain that, I would say that it's because we're higher developed central nervous system. It's much more complex, so we are able to think complex things like, why am I here? What's the purpose? Why do I need to stroke God's nutsack in order to get rain? I feel like these questions are perfectly explainable by the fact that we have a higher functioning brain. Y'all probably couldn't hear it, but Casey thinks that it doesn't take a higher functioning brain in order to stroke God's nutsack. Oh, to talk about stroking God's nutsack.
Well, we're going to need some kind of psychological fourth Big Bang to account for man's moral and aesthetic sense.
A fourth Big Bang. Now, I think he's probably going to reiterate what I'm about to explain to you. What he means by Big Bang here is just like what he meant by the initial Big Bang theory, right? It's that like a light switch, these things just popped into existence. He thinks, and he'll tell you this here in a second, he literally thinks that like a human's ability to reason and think popped into existence. He thinks that the diversity of life just poof into existence, which is actually a creationist idea. Abiogenesis, just pop. Like, he doesn't consider the processes behind any of these things. He thinks that they literally just popped. Well, we'll play this again just to remind you of what he fucking thinks.
Smoke weed every day.
That's it. That's what he thinks. For every single Big Bang he has, he thinks, poof, it just happened.
In his search for meaning, significance, and purpose. And of course, his appreciation for the true, the good, and the beautiful. And again, you must understand these problems require bangs. I mean, sudden binary pops into existence, since there's no evidence for any gradual development in any of these. So I, like you, have a choice.
This hurts so much. This is really stupid. Yes, honey, it is really stupid because there's all kinds of evidence for gradual development of all of these things. Like, the Big Bang obviously was an instantaneous inflation, but he's not really talking about the Big Bang. He's talking about the Big Bang plus the evolution of the universe in general. That's what he's talking about in the Big Bang, like the cosmological one. That's what he's talking about. So none of these are bangs, like big bangs. They're gradual developments. And we have evidence for the gradual development for every single one of these.
It's either faith in these four Big Bangs of somethings from nothings to account for what we see all around us, or faith in some kind of creator God behind it all.
Well, see, this is a false dichotomy. And I've been seeing this more and more because they'll often present a false dichotomy between their position and a straw man position that they just fucking made up. Because everything that we've mentioned here tonight has evidence behind it. Everything has evidence of a gradual development of all of these things. All four of the things that he mentioned. There's evidence for gradual development. But he presents a straw man versus his position. And that is what makes him a shithead.
So, next time someone asks you, hey, what about the Big Bang? Make sure you ask them, which one? The cosmological, biological, anthropological, or psychological? I'm Frank Pastore for Prager University.
Greg Pastore? Something Pastore. Anyways, I do believe that this guy's passed away. I hate being disrespectful to a guy like this after he's dead, but damn, he's still influencing people with bad information, and I feel like it's incumbent upon me to refute the dumbass shit that he has said. So I hate that he passed away or he died the way that he did, but still, I mean, this was a pretty dumbass video. All right, well, that's gonna be our show for tonight. I really appreciate you guys watching tonight, listening to me rant about this dumbass PragerU video, and I really hope that you guys got something good out of this, either entertainment or information, either one. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this dumb fucking video. If you liked it, let me know that too. But hey, regardless, if you made it this far, be sure to smash that like button. Y'all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.